Mr. Kohl?
Here.
Miss Osles? Mr. Friesen?
Present.
Mr. Cox?
Here.
Mr. Collins?
Here.
Miss Dickerson?
Here.
Chair Taylor?
Here. All right, so the next thing we've got on our agenda is approval of minutes. I need a motion and a second.
I'll move to approve minutes as written.
All right, let's do a voice vote. Was there anyone not present that wishes to abstain? Let's see. All right. All righty. All right, so let's do a voice vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. And we have no findings of fact tonight, so we are ready for the public hearing.
You gonna introduce a new board member?
Oh, I should have done that in the call to order. All right, so we've got new board member tonight. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is John Kohl, and I live actually close to the area that we're discussing tonight. Happy to be here.
Are we supposed to be turning on our mics?
Yes, I was getting ready to remind everybody, it's been a while, but make sure and use your mics so we can catch your voice.
All right, so the question is, should we go ahead and do the motion that is agenda item number 6, moving that up? Do we need to go ahead and move Mr. Kohl to be a regular member to participate tonight, or is he participating as an alternate tonight? And then we'll move him up later.
We can move them up.
Okay.
I'll
So-
need a first and a second for that.
Yeah, so I will entertain a motion to move alternate board member Kohl to be a regular member.
Second.
Do I have a motion? Also, you're the,
I'll do the motion. I move to move alternate board member Kohl to a regular member.
I'll second it.
all right. Let's do a voice vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Well, welcome aboard as a full regular member. Since we can't all see each other's name tags from up here, we can go ahead and introduce ourselves real quickly before we get into the public hearing. I'm Andy Taylor. I get to be the chair for the Board of Adjustment and Appeals. We'll go down this way and then loop back around.
Okay. I'm Matt Collins. I've been on the board probably a little under a year, maybe over a year at this point, just a little over.
And my name is Adam Cox. I've been on the board now for 6 months, I guess. This but second meeting.
Well, John Kohl, first night.
Colleen Dickerson, and I was an alternate until July. Now I'm a full board member.
Randy Friesen, co-chair, or whatever it is, falls after vice chair, yeah. And I've been on for quite a while.
And this is my first time chairing, so I've been on the board for a while, but, well, let's get into it. Next item on the agenda here is the public hearing. There are 6 members present, therefore 5 votes affirmative votes are required to grant a variance or appeal. The board is authorized to grant or deny a variance by Part 3, Section 60 of the Englewood City Charter. Anyone aggrieved by a decision rendered by this board may appeal that decision to a court of record. However, such an appeal must be made within 30 days of the board's decision. Any approved variance is effective at the end of the appeal period. Building permits for construction associated with an approved variance will not be issued until the appeal period is ended. Building permits must be obtained and construction begun within 180 days of the variance's effective date. Procedure for the meeting is that the case will be introduced and an overview will be given by staff. The applicant will present their request and the reasons the variance should be granted. Proponents will be given an opportunity to speak. Opponents will address the board, and then, if needed, staff will address the board again. The public hearing for case VAR 2024-003 is now open. The applicant is requesting a renewal of the waiver of a primary residency requirement for a short-term rental of a property located in the R1C zone district. I have verification of the publication and posting of the subject property that I'll pass around. All right, so now it's time, could staff approach for an overview?
Yeah, thank you. So for those of you
Sir,
that don't,
will you please,
I gotta do this part. I always, gotta raise my hand.
do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Will Charles.
Thank you.
Alrighty. For those of you that are new or don't know me, I'm Will Charles. I'm Planner 2 in the Community Development Department. Good to be back in front of you guys. So as far as the case tonight goes, this one's a little, or this, not this one individually, but these are a little unique to this board as their waivers, which are a little bit different from our variances or appeals. So they have their own criteria that we're going to go through. So just kind of keep that in mind that they're a different process from the things that typically come before this board. All right, so getting into the case, the property is 4477 South Pennsylvania Street. This is about 4 or 5 minutes south in a car from the hospitals. As you can see on this property, it's a R1C zone district. And then as mentioned by the chair, the request is for a waiver of the primary residency requirement for a short-term rental. This is the second of these for this property. There was one, they requested this waiver last year. We're granted it, and then it's expiring, so they're asking for a new waiver. All right, so for these waivers, there's 3 criteria. So the first one, and I'll just go ahead and read these out. First criteria is that the conditions peculiar to the property or owner exist that do not apply generally to all STRs, such as properties located in commercial or medical wellness districts owned and managed by a medical facility or adjacent to a medical facility for predominant rental and supportive patient care. So the back half of that is really the one that applies to this property in particular. In the past year, they've had 56% of their residents, tenants, whatever word you choose to use of people staying in this STR were for hospital stays. And then the second criteria is that there are alternative effective means of assuring owner oversight and regulatory compliance. So for this one, the applicant still lives in the Denver metro area. They live over in Lakewood, so they're still there and present if there's any immediate issues that they need to be there for. They're checking on their property and making sure that everything is well maintained and that the renters or tenants are taking care of the property. And then the third criterion is that the STR will not alter the essential character of the area. As far as STRs go, there is this home ownership or this home residency requirement for most of our zone districts. But STRs as a use are allowed in all of our residential districts. So this would not change that essential character as STRs are permitted. They're asking for this waiver for the residency portion, which is permitted by Title V and primarily for these medical related STRs. So that is the short and sweet presentation for this STR waiver. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and then the applicant is here as well.
Does anyone from the board have any questions? Ms. Dickerson?
Why 2 years?
Sorry?
Why 2 years?
So there's no number in the code as far as what line they can ask for, as far as they could ask for a 2-month waiver, they could ask for a 99-year waiver if they wanted to. You can ask the applicant as well when they have a chance. As far as the previous one, it was for a year. We haven't received any complaints on this one. They have very good reviews as far as the actual STR goes. So that's why they're,
Well, I
I
have
assume, asking for a longer waiver.
the follow-up question is how when is the STR renewal license due?
2 months from today.
Pretty much the same time period?
I'll look at it while the applicant has a chance to speak, and I'll get back to you.
Because it would seem to make sense to renew the license for 2 years to correspond to the waiver.
Sure.
So for the 56% figure you cited, was that 56% of residency or 56% of occupying time?
They have it listed as 56% of the days, so there was some that were, non-hospital related stays, as well as the time where it was unoccupied, so 56% of the total time.
But the primary reason for the request for the variance is because it's medical adjacent use, correct?
Correct. So, being a benefit to our medical district where there is a deficiency in the number of hotels in that area is the primary reason why these waivers were included in the code. So by them, having 56% of the nights that someone's staying at the STR kind of shows that that's, a leading cause for why this STR is being rented.
But there's not like a typical standard that we would look to in the future, like 30% or above or anything similar?
No, I mean, as far as this, if there were kind of lines in the sand, it makes it a little bit easier of an administrative thing to handle. If it's like, if you're over these numbers, we can approve your waiver. For these more subjective ones, that's why it comes to a board like this one to deliberate on it.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I know section 531-4A2 does state, and we received it last time, was an affidavit from the medical facility. Do we have that again in this case?
Sorry, which affidavit?
So in the original case, we had an affidavit from the medical facility where the resident had already contacted them and gotten a thing that said, hey, they've contacted us, but we don't have an official program, they're working with us. And we received that affidavit, which is a requirement of the code in order for it to be approved. Did we receive that again this time or no?
Yeah, so the things that are in your packet are what was attached to the application, but I'll let the applicant kind of speak about their relationship with the hospitals.
Perfect, thank you.
Are there any more questions from the board?
Oh, just that the caveat is that the people that be staying in the STR must be employees and or representatives at the hospital, is that correct?
Yeah, so on the, one of the attachments is a kind of Excel spreadsheet listing out, and it has a line of, the reason for person's stays. And it kind of ranges from, people doing work at the hospital to, people in town for, taking care of people that are going to the hospital or, have their own stays at the hospital.
I believe you stated that you haven't had any complaints over the past year.
Correct, we have not
Okay.
had any.
With the requirement of the percentage being on the medical side, do you guys check on that multiple times throughout the year or only at the time of renewal?
As far as the quantity of, no, I mean, we check on it whenever, these waivers are applied for. Once the waiver is applied for, it's granted for that time. They can obviously, get dinged for the same reasons that any other STR could, but it's, when it comes time for this renewal of the waiver, that's where that proof of stay, is important.
Okay.
Thank you. I think that's all we have at this time.
Thank you.
The applicant may now come forward to testify in this case. So if you could please state your name and address the secretary who will administer the oath.
Sarah Almond.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
Yes.
Please state your name and address.
Sarah Almond, 4477 South Pennsylvania Street.
Thank you.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for joining us tonight. We've received the information that you submitted, as part of our packet, but if there's material you'd like to present to us tonight, to speak up in favor of this, please do so. So now's the
Sure.
opportunity.
So last year, there was a big question around what does predominantly mean? So that's why I kept track. I don't know if you all have the spreadsheet that I kept of what's predominant. So it is 100% of the stay or the time since November 3rd last year, or November, yeah, when I had the license. So 56% of stays were for the hospital. A lot of them, some of them are booked last minute because they go into the hospital. It's family, it's people rehabbing at Craig, things like that. 35% were other stays, visiting family, weddings, et cetera, and then 9% unoccupied. So that's been, I've had great feedback. I've stayed very connected to my neighbors on all sides of me. There's no complaints. I turn the unit myself every time it turns over. So no one stays less than 5 days. And unless there's an exception, which is written in the copy of the Airbnb ad, if you will. So I have not spoken again to Swedish, which you're referring to. I could do that. I wasn't aware that that was required, and it was something that I did last time to just, receive support. But I could do that if that's what's required, but I don't have any other documentation to provide at this time.
Are there any questions?
Yep, I've got one. So the reason I asked that before is that the code does specify an alternative effective means of assuring owner oversight and regulatory compliance. So if your intent is to use that spreadsheet, have you had a scenario where you've had to turn somebody away because you were shifting too far on the non-medical side? And if that scenario presented itself, would you be doing that? Would you deny somebody because you were out of compliance with number of medical days?
Yeah, so how I manage it is I update my spreadsheet and I look every single Monday at what I've got and where I'm at as far as number of stays. I also don't open up the calendar too far out. So there's a way that I can actually control who's booking and when. I would err on the side of staying, in predominance to the medical and that people are able to book last minute because it is both. People who are coming in with scheduled surgeries and people who are needing it last minute.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I guess I'll renew my question. Why 2 years?
When I came in last year with Eric, we had talked about 1 year or 2 years. There's really not a particular reason for 2 years other than it takes something to come in and do this. And I feel like it's been a really smooth process to have people and host, and I've been available. So that was why. But the STR renewal itself is annual in November for me.
Do you have to pay a fee every time you come before us for a variance?
Yep, and to renew.
But you have to do that for the licensing too, right?
What do you mean?
The
licensing
STR
is in the
renewal?
Yeah, that's what I meant, and the renewal as well. Yep.
I don't see why they couldn't do it simultaneously.
So I have to have this approval before I can apply for renewal.
Well, I'll state that I appreciate very much you having the spreadsheet. It makes it a lot more clear and believable, so thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
I'd like to follow up on Mr. Collins's question. It does seem like medical things would be more last minute than it would be, for the short-term non-medical uses. And I would like to emphasize, have you ever had to cancel or turn away a medical use because you'd already booked for a vacation or non-medical reason?
So the way Airbnb works, I wouldn't know if I wouldn't cancel somebody because if Randall was like, hey, I would like to book your Airbnb and it's booked, like chances are he's not gonna reach out to me for that. So you actually are penalized as a host if you cancel with someone. But I can say, looking at the people that have come to stay, there are plenty of people who have scheduled surgeries that need, especially at Craig, who are coming for long-term. I mean, my last guest was there the 16th to the 4th for back surgery that was scheduled. I personally just had a surgery at Swedish Hospital that was scheduled. So I don't know that I could say that it's, yes, there's emergency, and we've also had people coming in for childbirths that are scheduled and planned that are high risk. So that's what I've noticed.
Are you comfortable sharing the special pricing you offer to people who inquire about staying simultaneously with Swedish?
Sure. Yeah, I had one that happened less than a month ago. She reached out that her husband was in, they didn't have a place to stay beyond, they were at some Airbnb further away. My pricing was at $95 a night, which is pretty low. And I honored it from 666 down to 555. So people do reach out to me frequently for lower pricing or longer stays. And we do that all inside of the chat, like the inbox chat. And then I just send them special pricing.
So with this being tied to your practice as a doula, correct? Mm-hmm. Is this something that you plan to continue more or less in perpetuity? Or after those 2 years, is there any sort of long-term plan for this property?
So do I plan to keep my business as a doula in perpetuity or my property in that way?
Your property here and offer this service for a longer term?
I mean, my business isn't shifting. I still have the same business and I have a new website under just my name, but that's absolutely the work I continue to do and providing the house and space for people to heal and recover in. I'm not asking for a longer waiver because I don't know that, I mean, I may not continue, like I may sell the house or not continue not to want to rent, but yeah.
This is more of a code question, but what would happen with the waiver were she to sell the house? Does it just terminate at point of sale?
We can bring Will back up.
And I think it is covered in code that it goes away. I'll double check. I'm looking at it right now.
Apologies.
No, but we can always bring staff back up after we
Gotcha.
hear from everyone. So that's a good question. I had a question about, on some of the numbers you shared. When you're calculating up the percentages, you're also including your long-term stays in there, those that are longer than 30 days?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, yep, and you can see the numbers, right? Like there was one that was 46 days from November through December, part of December last year. So they're not all STR, but if you see the column that says STR, it says if it was an STR stay or not.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the board? All right, well, thank you.
Yeah.
At this time, are there any persons present who wish to speak in favor of this request? All right, seeing no one, are there any persons present who wish to speak in opposition to this request? All right. Well, we can bring staff back forward for that additional question and any additional comments.
I did also find where in the code it cites what happens in that case. And that is if it's ownership change of more than 10%, it's an automatic revocation of the SDR license.
So you're still under oath. What was the question again? Just for
What would happen to the waiver at point of sale? But it sounds like we already have an answer.
Yeah, so I mean, and to keep in mind, you know, this waiver is purely for this primary residency portion of this. The same rules and regulations that apply for every other STR still apply for this. So this is purely for this residency portion of STRs.
So yeah, so if someone were to sell any STR,
they would have to come back and apply for their own STR, you know, application, and you know, this, if it was this specific property, they'd have to do this waiver process themselves as well.
Another quick question for staff. If we did grant a 2-year waiver, at the 1 year renewal, would staff audit the stays to make sure they were still predominantly medical stays?
I mean, you could add that to as a condition of the waiver. You know, as far as, you know, like the actual, you know, I guess auditing of STRs, you know, that happens during that annual STR licensing. So we'll be checking for everything that we usually do on these at that point. If you wanted to, you know, add a condition to the approval, that would probably be the best method to ensure that happens.
Thank you.
You have another question?
Yeah, it's pretty nitpicky, but the fact is there seems to be 1 or 2 month difference between the license renewal and the waiver.
Yeah.
So if we were to grant it, I would want to add that time period gap to it to make them match up the waiver with the licensing. And can you do a 2-year license?
So the license is codified in there with a date. So it says an annual SGR license. So that has to happen every year. We can't change that without changing
All
the
right, well,
code.
we'd still have to do the gap.
Yeah, but I believe,
Yeah.
Chair Taylor, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we have the ability to do that as part of our motion, correct?
We could change the time frame. We could make that a condition, but based on we can handle some of this in our discussion once we've closed the public hearing to just talk about those types of conditions.
Mr. Isom has a question of swear you in.
Do I need to get sworn in?
You do.
Okay.
Do you swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that you will tell the truth in this proceeding before the Board of Adjustment and Appeals?
I do.
Please state your name.
Brian Isom. The first question I wanted to answer was one that Ms. Dickerson asked earlier. Her permit is valid until November 9th, 2024. The reason there's the gap is first, she has to get this approval. And then once she gets the approval, then she would submit all of her paperwork for her permit renewal for the STR. And there's review time and things associated with that. That's kind of why that gap is there. It's kind of in this case, the chicken has to go first and then the egg comes second. They have to get approval of this waiver and then they can submit their paperwork for the short-term rental, which, yeah, it takes review time on our staff and then the applicant getting all their paperwork together so that the 1 month to 2 month kind of lag time between the two is kind of there by design, honestly. I mean, you could extend the waiver to get them there, but then their permit they'd probably still end up applying for a waiver early because the noticing that's required for these meetings kicks everything out at least 15 days. This stuff has to get reviewed on our end to make sure that they have applicable paperwork when they turn it in. So it's kind of honestly the difference between this waiver and a short-term rental permit is kind of needed. And even if you overlapped it, it would still end up likely having that whole 1 month to 2 month difference.
Got a quick question for staff. In the case we just did a 2-year waiver, theoretically, 2 years comes around, her actual renewal is in November, the waiver would expire prior to the STR permit expiring. Would that nullify the permit then if we didn't intentionally overlap the two?
I don't know that we've had that issue arise yet. This is kind of a newer process for us.
Any other questions while that one's being researched on the side?
Just trying to avoid the future issues.
I'm just more curious, is there any other residents within this area that has a same waiver?
You know, and not to spoil y'all's future meetings, but there's, I believe, 2 more of these probably this year. Similar idea. I haven't, those two are not on my case log, so I don't know exactly what the exact waiver language is on them, but, seeing as most of these waivers are related to these hospital, related STRs, I would imagine they're pretty similar.
Quick question then for staff in that case. I know at the previous waiver, we asked and tried to slightly encourage if the city was gonna reach out to Swedish to form any sort of official program in this area. Has that happened at all that you're aware of or no?
Sorry, which groups?
So reach out directly, the city reaching out directly to Swedish to help formalize some sort of program in that STR area. I just didn't know if, I know last time we'd asked about it and slightly encouraged if that could happen, it would make a lot of this easier. I was just curious if those conversations had happened or not.
Do you know on that one, Brian?
Not that I'm aware of, but we have a pretty good relationship with Swedish,
Okay.
especially with certain members in our community development staff, speak to them on a regular basis. So
Okay.
if that's something that you want us to look at, we're happy to.
I think it
reach out
would
to
make
them.
this in future cases much easier and seamless.
Yeah, even if there was just a point of contact for folks seeking a waiver to reach out to that was consistent.
Yep, agreed.
So to answer the other question, if say the waiver was denied tonight or it expired and they did not renew, then yes, the STR permit would initially be violated and we could revoke the STR permit.
Thank you.
I don't see any additional questions from the board. Does anyone else? All right. So the public hearing is now closed. I need a motion and a second. So does anyone have a motion here?
I move to grant a STR waiver to the property of 4477 South Pennsylvania Street in Englewood, Colorado, waiving the residency requirement for the STR for a time period of 26 months from today, per Englewood Municipal Code 531-4.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so now we can have our board discussion now that there's a motion on the table. How are folks looking at this with the criteria that we've got?
I really appreciate the level of tracking she's done around the medical stays. I think that for me, at least, that satisfies that second requirement, that there is some alternative means, making sure that she's complying with the STR waiver rules. And I think if staff does end up talking to somebody, that would even further encourage it for the future. But for me, I think that satisfies my need, especially given we had these same conversations like about a year ago as well.
Yeah, I think doing the first one of these last time, first one for this property, it's nice to have the data. I think the affidavits were helpful last time, but having the real data is really helping me as well.
Hopefully that might help set a bar for future applicants, et cetera, to have some sort of tracking system very similar.
Could I amend my own motion? I would like to amend the motion to require staff at the 1-year renewal point to audit the stays to make sure they stay in compliance of the predominantly medical stay rule of over 50%.
Is that okay with the seconder?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we have to do it differently, don't we?
Okay.
Since it was already seconded.
We amended it, so we have to do the amendment, right?
Let's not worry about it.
Well, but we would have to second and then vote on the amendment first, right?
Okay. So we can vote on the amendment.
Now we.
So we need a second for the amendment?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we need a second for the amendment.
Second.
And then we have to discuss the amendment and vote on it.
Now we can discuss the amendment and we can vote. Would this help with the criteria itself for making the decision on the actual motion?
I think it I think it helps add to that second piece that there's some additional level of oversight during that 2 years to make sure there's compliance with the waiver,
It sets a nice precedent.
and helps establish a process on the staff side if we're gonna have more of these coming in the future, as we know that there is gonna be some sort of auditing at that renewal point if we extend a longer waiver where we feel one's needed.
Are we limiting it to 1 year, the requirement to do this?
I said at the 1 year renewal point, which is if they're 1 year STRs.
Okay, so every
As it's renewed.
renewal
Yeah,
period.
For the,
Okay.
for the time period of this waiver, which in this case, there would be one renewal period.
So it would just be some additional documentation at that time.
Yep. And then staff to audit it, make sure it's still in compliance.
I guess I'm certainly in favor of doing more of a 2-year thing after people have been able to come back like this to us. You know, at the end of the first year, you want to know what's going on with the property, but if things are going well, no reason for everybody to be coming back.
So are we ready to do a voice vote on this amendment to the motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, motion passes. So now back to the original discussion. The motion is to grant the 2-year waiver,
26 months.
26-month waiver, with this now additional, upon renewal of the
STR.
STR, additional documentation would be provided on the utilization for medical purposes.
Correct.
Okay. So is there additional discussion? If there's not additional discussion, I will entertain a motion, or entertain, I guess we can do a voice, or do a vote, call for a vote.
She'll take it one at a time.
Yep.
Mr. Collins,
I vote in favor.
Mr. Kohl,
In favor.
Mr. Friesen,
I vote yes.
Mr. Cox,
In favor?
Ms. Dickerson,
In favor.
Chair Taylor.
Sorry, in favor.
I vote in favor. Do we need to read off related to the criteria under this?
Can you please?
Okay.
I can do it since
Yeah, go ahead.
Yep, I believe this satisfies the first criteria of special circumstances or conditions, particularly to specific short-term rental, that does not apply, specifically the fact it is adjacent to a medical M1 and M2 zone district, which per the intent of council when they made this was so that we could have these specific exceptions. Second criteria is that will not weaken the general purposes of Title V, Chapter 31, based off of her location, how close she lives, the fact she's coming through and checking after every single rental, and the level of documentation she's doing to make sure she's in compliance of the medical exception. I believe she meets that second criteria. And with the third criteria, how she's providing the alternative effective means of ensuring the goals of the regulation, specifically around the medical piece of the short-term rental. I think her documentation does that quite well, and it meets all three of those.
Should we go around again just to make sure there's nothing else to add?
Yep.
So can we go back around again just to vote? Just in case folks have anything to add to those criteria or that they're voting in alignment with those criteria.
Mr. Kohl,
Still in favor.
Mr. Friesen,
In favor for the reasons stated.
Mr. Cox,
In favor?
Mr. Collins,
In favor for the reasons stated.
Ms. Dickerson,
In favor for the reasons stated.
Chair Taylor.
I voted yes for the reasons stated.
Motion passes 6-0.
Thank you very much. All right. So we are at, and we already did item number 6 related to the board member resignation and moving Mr. Kohl to be a regular member. Mr. Rieger moved out of Inglewood, so Thank you for joining us as a regular member. Staff's choice, do we have anything?
We do have one question, and that would be if the board ever wanted to entertain moving our meetings to an earlier time, like 6 or 6:30 rather than 7. Our Planning and Zoning Commission has moved their meetings up from 7 to 7:30 within the last year or two. And we just wanted to ask the same question of this board, if you wanted to have a discussion about it, if you want to wait a month and have another discussion at the next meeting. But we just wanted to pose that question to you all.
I mean, that'd be fine with me. Is it codified what the time is? Does that have to get, how does that get changed?
I think it's just as we notice the meeting.
What would be the reasons for doing that?
What would be the reasons on our end?
Yeah,
I mean, the biggest issue for us is that our staff stays here. And so if they're working additional hours, they have to adjust their schedules. But the other question is just what's more convenient for the commission. That's more important, or the Board of Adjustment, sorry, not the commission. That's the biggest issue, is what's more convenient for you all than for us. We're the paid employees. We're here either way.
I guess my only concern would be for the applicants. That would be the only concern, is making sure that the board's available at a time that people would be able to come in and actually do the hearings.
yeah, I mean, I agree with that, and if we start at 6 and then it goes till 8, people that eat late like I do eat really late. So I kind of prefer keeping it as we are, both for myself and for others.
I mean,
That's just me.
personally fine moving. It was more of just the public that I would be concerned about.
I mean, I'm comfortable moving it forward to 6:30. It is a rush to get home from work and then get here. But I am sensitive to the same point you brought up about, our businesses, applicants coming here, and I think they're in the same rush potentially, but, yeah. I guess we won't know unless we try it. So,
Does that become a bylaws change, or how do we actually go about changing? the
Yeah, that's a
plan
good-
correctly.
that's a good question. Does it require action on our part to move the time forward, or is this just input you're looking for from us?
We are going to look into it to see if it requires a change of bylaws or if there's any kind of action required on your part. We just wanted to know if there's any kind of interest first before we start moving forward with if any required action needs to be taken.
Is there anybody that can't do 6:30? We want to check.
Yeah, does 6:30 tend to work for people, or is that?
I'm very flexible.
I mean, I think it's something to look into, especially since it's consistent with what some of the other commissions are doing.
Okay, we'll look into it.
Do we have any cases on the radar for coming months, or?
We do in November,
Okay,
short-term waiver, I believe, right?
I think they've submitted. I don't know if that we've gotten all of their paperwork in yet, so they're in the next 2 to 3 months, depending on when they get all their application into us.
so nothing for next month. Okay. All right, attorney's choice, anything?
Nothing for me, and just welcome new members.
Thank you. Board member's choice.
So just to emphasize that if there was a contacted Swedish, I think it would make a lot of the medical ones much smoother.
All right. Now, I forget, do we need a motion to adjourn? It's my first meeting as
Nope.
chair. No motion to adjourn. All right, we are adjourned. All right, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.